What is the Dome of the Rock and why is it important? The Dome of the Rock is an octagonal structure on an elevated platform in the middle of the Temple Mount area in Jerusalem. It is revered by most Muslims as the spot from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. So, the Dome of the Rock, basically, the Muslims went to a site, which is the Temple Mount, that was considered very sacred and holy to the Jews, very important site, and they built their thing on the Jews' thing. So this is a big deal to everybody, and there's violence there all the time. Now, when was the Dome of the Rock built? Between 685 AD and 691 AD, of course. So there is a 6-year span. And this is going to be the key to what we are going to see right now. That is quite amazing. Okay, guys, now here is the fascinating thing about all of this. Keeping in mind what the Dome of the Rock is, what it represents, and how it causes so much strife between the Jews and the Muslims. Because there is a Muslim structure on a Jewish structure, and they both consider them sacred. So considering that, remembering that it was put there either from anywhere from 685 AD to 691 AD. There's a 6-year gap there of what actual year you can say it was actually put there. Now, with keeping that in mind, going to Daniel chapter 12, Daniel asks, he says, how long until the end? And the first time he asks, it's told to him 1,260 days. Then he asked again, he said he didn't understand, and then it's told to him 1,290 days. And then the third time is told to Daniel 1,335 days. And then it said, this is the important thing, blessed is he who comes at the 1335. So there's something special about the 1335. Blessed is he who comes to that. Now, if we take these numbers and instead of days turn them into years, because God does that in the Bible. He turned 40 days into 40 years. He turned 6 days of creation into a pattern for 6,000 years from Adam to his second coming, because a day is as 1,000 years and 1,000 years is as the date of the Lord. The number 6 is the number of man, showing that, man would be going through this time of testing for 6,000 years until he comes back. So God turns days into years, and this is how you see mysteries in the Bible. Now, if we take this special date, the special number that was given, because blessed is he who comes to the 1335, and instead of days we turn it into years, 1,335 years, and we go to when the Dome of the Rock was built. Let's say we believe it's built in 685. Well, if you add 1,335 years, not days, to 685 BC, you come up to 2020. Blessed is he who comes to the 1335. Is that amazing? Yes, and it goes for the same in the years to come after that, because we don't know exactly when it was built, but depending on the year that you use, for instance, if you use 691 AD, add 1,335, you come to 2026. Some people believe that the Dome of the Rock is the abomination that causes desolation, but that's not what the Bible says. What it is, therefore, for us today, I believe, is to see a clue. It's a pattern. So what does this mean? What do I believe this means? Well, it shows us a definite pattern and a clue to show us that we are at a special point in time, that this is not a coincidence. It being built in those years is not a coincidence. 1335 being called, being shown that that's a special number. Blessed is he who comes to this number. And it could be anywhere from 2020 to 2026. Considering what's happened from 2020, I mean, it's showing us a pattern. So what I think is going to happen is that when the real abomination that causes desolation happens. Now, the abomination is the Antichrist who causes desolation, goes around and he's destroying places and things. But it says in Daniel chapter 11 and Matthew chapter 24 that he will sit in the holy mountain of God, Mount Moriah, and he will cause desolation. So when that happens, I believe that that year that happens, that is going to show us exactly where the 1335 days start. Because again, the extrapolation to years is just showing us a clue and a pattern. But when he sits in the Temple Mount, it's a marker. Because we can calculate from the year that he sits, let's say he sits in it in 2024. Well, then we go back 1335 years, and that would mean that it would have been 689 BC that it was built. See what I'm doing there? See what I'm doing there? So when the abomination, the Antichrist, that causes desolation, sits in the mount of the holy mountain, and when he sits in the holy mountain, at that time, I believe that we can mark out exactly when the temple, the Dome on the Rock, was actually built. It will show us that exact pattern. Because right now there's a 6 years. It could have been done in 685 to 691. That's quite amazing to me. This is all amazing to me because it's showing us that we are at the times, we are there. We are definitely there. This is not a coincidence. I mean, could it have been man to actually have that dome on the rock, which is such a prolific site for the two huge religions in the world, to be built in these years and then have it match up and show an exact pattern for the 1335 in Daniel chapter 12, which was written hundreds of years before it was built, and now it's showing a pattern over 1,000 years later after it's built with the number 1335? No way. These plans, these patterns, they're so huge and there's gaps of time that it's so massive that it just, for man to have done this and it be so accurate, I just can't believe that. Now, another part of this amazing pattern that I want to show you guys is that the first amount of days that Daniel was given that he asked for, was given 1260 days, and then it would be the end. But so what 1260 is 42 months. That's exactly 3.5 years. 3.5 years on a Hebrew calendar, because the Hebrew calendar, there's 360 days in a year. 360 is also for full circle, and that's kind of what the Bible shows, these patterns. Okay. Now, the amazing thing about this is between 1260, the first amount of days he was told, and 1335, the third amount of days that he was told, there is 75 years. This part's really amazing. So 1,260 to 1,335, 75-year gap. Why is this amazing? I'll tell you what. Actually, I can pinpoint when the Dome on the Rock happened right now. I just figured this out. Well, if you go to 1948, 49, give or take, but let's say 48, when Israel became its own thing again, and you put on 75 years, you know what year you come out to? 2023. But if you started at 1949, you come out to 2024. Is that not incredible? Another mystery of God, another clue. He said that when the books are opened in the last days, the wise will understand, but the wicked will not. So, going by that, I believe that the Dome on the Rock, using 2023, going back 1,335 days, was probably put there in 686. Excuse me, no. Would be actually 688. 688. Because if we go to 2023, which is 75 years from 1948, we get to, and then we go back 1,335 years, 2023, we get to 688. So it's right in the middle. That's very interesting. So I believe that the Dome on the Rock was 688 AD. The wise would understand in the last days. Now, the reason that I have the 12 here is because this is amazing too. If you add up the 1335, right? 1, 3, 3, and 5. That is 12. Why is 12 significant? Well, for one, all of this was talked about in Daniel chapter 12. What else is 12? Well, there were 12 disciples. There's 12 tribes of Israel. Not only that, but in 2030, that would be the 12th Shemitah, the 12th 7-year cycle from when Israel became its own issue, its own thing. These are all patterns, guys. These are all clues. These are all mysteries that I'm showing you that they're huge. They're amazing. Because God looks down into time, through time, all the future and the past from eternity. And that's why we can have things like this. And he shows us these things, these mysteries, to show us who he is and that he is God and he knows all things.